ready, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. We're here today to talk about an investigation, a 9-month investigation that has netted some pretty good results. But before we talk about the details of the case, I want to thank some of the partners that helped us in this investigation. We could not have done this without the assistance of the FBI and ASAC Casey Gabriel is here with us. Where's Casey? Thank you guys so much for your help. We also have Angela Corey here with us. Angela, again, as always, has helped us in the prosecution and helped us day to day in the working of this case. We also got a lot of help from Florida Highway Patrol, and they're here represented today by Major Richard Mecklin and Captain Derek Bars, and as well as Troopers Glenn Ganan and Matt Finley. So thank you guys for being here with us today as well. I'd also like to thank a couple people who are not here today but played a big role in the case and really helped us again in bringing this case to a successful conclusion. That's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Northeast Florida HIDTA, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area program that we participate in here in North Florida, the Harris County Sheriff's Office in Texas, and the Douglas County Sheriff's Office in Georgia. So again, without these law enforcement partners, we would not have been able to have been successful in this case. With that, I'm going to turn this over briefly to Detective Ron Linvay, to Chief Ron Linvay, to walk through the details of this case. Ron is the Chief of Homeland Security, Narcotics, and Vice, and he'll again walk you through some of the details in the case, and then we'll be able to answer a few questions after Ron's finished. So, Ron?
Thank you. All right, as the sheriff noted, this was a 9-month investigation that was started by detectives from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and special agents from the FBI's Safe Streets Task Force. They gathered criminal intelligence from a reliable source indicating that Philip Lee and Carlton Parrish were distributing multiple ounces of powder cocaine to numerous individuals in the Jacksonville area. As the investigation progressed, investigators learned that Philip Lee and Carlton Parrish were purchasing cocaine from 2 independent sources right here in Jacksonville. Those sources were identified as 2 separate drug trafficking organizations who purchased cocaine separately from individuals in Houston, Texas. And at this point, we're going to separate the investigation and try to keep this clean as DTO1 and DTO2, which is Drug Trafficking Organizations 1 and 2. DTO1 was led by Patrick Johnson, who resided in Miami, Florida. He was assisted by co-conspirators Patrick Robinson, Jacoby Williams, Daryl Brown, and Derek Alexander of Jacksonville. On July 2nd of 2015, we received information from a confidential source that Patrick Johnson directed Daryl Brown, who's a truck driver, to go to Houston, Texas, and meet with his cocaine supplier to purchase illegal narcotics and then transport them back here to Jacksonville. On this day, members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and the FBI and the Florida Highway Patrol set up on I-10 and awaited the arrival of Daryl Brown. After a period of time, Brown's vehicle was located and a traffic stop was initiated, and a search of that vehicle revealed 15 kilos of cocaine and a handgun. Daryl Brown was arrested and his vehicle was seized. Subsequently, a search warrant was served at the Jacksonville home of Jacoby Williams, based on information provided by a confidential source. The search warrant resulted in the following seizures: 6.5 more additional kilos of powder cocaine, 16.5 pounds of high-grade marijuana, $141,588 in cash, an assault rifle, 2 handguns, 2 vehicles, and a drug ledger detailing the business. At this time, DTO1 was dismantled and efforts were directed towards DTO2. DTO2 was led by Anthony Perkins, who's a resident of Houston, Texas, and included the following Jacksonville co-conspirators: Antoine Pearson Sr., Antoine Pearson Jr., and Gregory Pearson. They're all related. Sr. is the father of Jr. and the brother of Gregory Pearson. On July 28th, intelligence relating to DTO2 indicated that Pearson Sr. and Pearson Jr. were flying to Atlanta, Georgia. They were going to meet with their cocaine supplier, Anthony Perkins, there. Surveillance teams from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and the FBI traveled to Atlanta to conduct surveillance at that meeting. During surveillance operation, the teams identified a black Ford pickup truck that dropped Perkins off at the Atlanta airport. A traffic stop was later initiated by Douglas County Sheriff's deputies who were assisting our surveillance team. And that traffic stop led to the seizure of $32,000 in drug money that was concealed in the bed of the pickup truck. The money was seized and the driver was released pending further investigation. On August 21st, intelligence gathered indicated that Gregory Pearson was traveling from Jacksonville to Houston, Texas, to meet with Anthony Perkins to purchase an undetermined quantity of powder cocaine at the direction of Antoine Pearson Sr. Surveillance teams from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and the FBI traveled to Houston to conduct surveillance of that meeting as well. Investigative efforts led to the discovery of a semi-truck that Gregory Pearson was using to transport cocaine from Houston to Jacksonville. Surveillance teams followed the semi and coordinated a traffic stop, which was initiated by Harris County Sheriff's Office deputies who were assisting the Jacksonville surveillance team. And the traffic stop revealed 11 kilos of cocaine in the rear of the semi-cab. Gregory Pearson was arrested, and the semi-tractor was seized along with the 11 kilograms of cocaine. Later that same evening, a search warrant was obtained and served at the residence of Anthony Perkins in Houston, Texas. That warrant resulted in the seizure of $305,000 and the arrest of Anthony Perkins. Around that same time frame, members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office located and arrested Antoine Perkins Jr., and he was charged with conspiracy to traffic cocaine. Efforts were made to locate and arrest Antoine Perkins Sr., and he was arrested yesterday after he turned himself in. The investigation continues, so there are going to be some pieces that we can't fully disclose, but we were at a point with where we are in the investigation at this point where we're able to bring those details forward. I'm going to turn it back over to the sheriff.
Thank you, Ron. And as you guys may know, this morning the undersheriff announced the arrest of Officer Betty Pearson. She's a 15-year veteran with JSO. She is the mother of Pearson Jr. that we just discussed. She was arrested last night. She's been charged with aiding in his escape, and we'll, that's really all that needs to be said about that. But we're continuing to look at did she play a part in the rest of this investigation? That's ongoing, so we'll continue to dig into that piece. But as you can tell, this is a very complicated case. Again, a 9-month-long investigation. But I want to thank the members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Narcotics Unit for their good work as always, and the good partnerships that we have with law enforcement and all really around the southeast, but especially northeast Florida. Without these partnerships, we could not have been able to, again, bring this case to a successful conclusion. So with that, we'll be glad to answer a few questions.
Scott Johnson, Channel 4 News. How many of these guys, trying to clarify, are from Houston? How many are from Jacksonville? Is this all Jacksonville arrests or some from out of the area?
It's a combination of both, and as far as a number, I'd have to we'll have to point to it afterwards if you want a detailed walk through it. But it's a combination of people from Houston and Jacksonville.
Kamasi Aaron, Channel 4. How big of a deal is it to have these two drug organizations dismantled?
I think it's a significant deal. We talked a lot about violent crime in Jacksonville, and we know that the drug trade fuels this violence that we deal with every day. So obviously, focusing on the drug trade for us, and you got to think about this. We did in a small window of time. We took about 30 some odd kilos away from this organization in a relatively small window. This organization, or these two organizations, were responsible for bringing potentially 100 kilos or more of cocaine into this city a year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of cocaine. That's a lot of violence on the street generated by that. So this is a significant arrest, a significant case.
Any idea how long this mother, who was the JSO officer, had she been involved prior to this incident that caused her to be arrested with the helping of the evasion?
We're still looking at that. At this point, it doesn't appear so. But again, we're going to dig into that even further. And if we find anything else, we'll add more charges.
And possibly a question for Ms. Corey. How's the prosecution going to be handled with these multiple different men in multiple different municipalities?
I'll let Rich answer that. Rich, introduce yourself. Rich Giglio.
Rich Giglio from the State Attorney's Office. I was working with narcotics on this operation. Essentially right now, because we're essentially on this operation, several people were just recently arrested. We had Shakobi Williams, Patrick Robinson, Patrick Johnson, and Darrell Brown arrested since about July 2nd, so their prosecutions are already proceeding. There was only so much we could get into their cases up until now because we were still knocking off other pieces of the operation. But right now we are still hammering out. There's obviously one person who's in custody with pending local charges based on the trafficking amount that he was bringing back. That's Greg Pearson. He's being held in Harris County right now. Anthony Perkins, the head guy that was supplying it from Houston, is still there awaiting extradition back to us. Obviously, since this was a joint operation with the feds, they're obviously looking at what people they might want to be involved with and where they can help us essentially wield the biggest hammer.
And there's no chance of RICO charges in this case?
Well, we really don't need them at this point. If we had needed to do the racketeering to get them, but when we get them on the felony substantive charges as we have here, there wouldn't be a reason to try to go after them for that. But that does tie in a lot with these types of operations.
Stephen, first go see Sheriff. You mentioned that this had been going on. Why do you think Jacksonville was one of those targeted places of going from Texas to Florida? And also, do you know at this time, or can you say how long this has been going on? How big of a blow is it to stop these two?
Well, these two DTOs have been dismantled. So as far as how long they've been going on, I can't answer that question. And I guess why Jacksonville is part of that question. Every major city in the United States has this happening. So and we're part of that equation, obviously. So that's why it's incumbent upon us to dig into these cases, dig into the tips. And that's what generates cases like this. It takes a long time. And again, back to the good work of the investigators involved. But it happens in every city in the United States. So.
Say 100 kilograms a year. Any idea how long this has been going? And can you give us a scope on the size of a drug operation for the city of Jacksonville? Like, is this a big one as far as the city goes?
Yeah, this is a significant one. There's no doubt about that. And I guesstimated a year based on the cocaine that we were able to seize just during our investigation.
Do we know where that cocaine was going, Northwest Jacksonville, or do we have any idea? Was it all?
Oh, listen, that cocaine goes all over Jacksonville. I mean, obviously you have the intensity of drug sales in the northwest part of the city, maybe a little more than certain places, but I can tell you that people come from all over the city to that northwest part of the city to buy this cocaine. So this is an issue, a Jacksonville issue. It's not a Northwest Jacksonville issue. So, that's something to keep in mind.
Stephanie Brown, WOKV. It looks based on the poster that some of the suspects are still at large.
Correct.
Can you talk about, I guess, the status, and are you confident they will be caught?
I'll just say that we are actively engaged in seeking these individuals, and I feel comfortable that we'll have them in custody soon.
Sheriff Amanda Warford with Action News Jax, do you feel comfortable that you have all of the people really connected to this, or the core people anyway? I know you said you have it dismantled, but other people that may have been connected in other ways.
Right, and we'll continue to look at that. I mean, obviously, the targets of this investigation, based on the investigation, we've been able to build charges on an arrest. As Ron said, there's still other parts of the investigation that we're looking at. So as we build more charges and have more people of interest, really, that we think we need to charge in this case, we will. So more charges could be pending, or we could be done, depending on where the investigation leads us.
You recovered a lot of guns. Any idea, or do you have the ability to find out if they were used in any crimes?
We can. I mean, I think the best thing we can do is and we will run NIBIN checks on the firearms to see, and then we'll have to wait on the results of that. So at this point, that's unknown.
Sheriff, what message do you have to those who are still in Jacksonville distributing drugs?
We talked about this a lot. We are committed to making Jacksonville the hardest city in America to deal drugs in, and I think this is part of that. I think this shows that. So, we're going to continue to work on this every day. It's a big issue for our city, and it fuels the biggest issue for our city, which is the violent crime issue. So we've got to continue to work on it and put resources towards it, and we're doing that.
On July 2nd, when you took down Darrell Brown, can you describe how that takedown happened? You say you had a lot of agencies staking out I-10, or what specifically happened there? Looking for a semi-truck, I assume?
I think I'll turn that over to Ron and we'll talk about the details of it.
That was where FHP's expertise in working the highway interdiction that they do really came into play. They worked with our investigators. They had an idea what they were looking for and found the truck on its way back and were able to stop.
Was it just a regular pullover?
It was just a traffic stop, yes.
Was
Nothing
that in
unusual
Duval
about
County? I'm sorry, was that in Duval County?
it. Yes.
Can you say where in Duval County approximately?
I don't have that information myself off the top of my head.
It's on your document.
I think it's on the arrest and booking
arrest
report.
document.
It should be listed.
Yeah, the 350 mile mark.
I tend at the 350 mile marker.
Overall, have the suspects been cooperative? Have any of them been willing to kind of talk about their involvement or the involvement of some of the other people?
It's still early, so we'll have to we'll wait and see, but we'll see how that plays out.
And as the sheriff, standing there looking at that table with all of those drugs, all of those guns, what do you think when you see that and know that that could have been on Jacksonville streets?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon us to keep doing the work that we're doing to make sure that we intercept this and get this off the streets. Again, I've said it many times, it fuels the biggest problem in our community, and we've got to have a keen focus on it to get ahead of that challenge.
And I'm sorry, I just don't know. Could you describe what we're looking at on that table? What kind of drugs are those right there?
Walk you through that, Ron.
Sure. You have marijuana packaged in different quantities there, and these are kilograms of cocaine, and then some of it's broken down into ounces, which are smaller street deals. And it's important to note too, this isn't even all the evidence. Because we've had so much activity in other jurisdictions, some of the evidence is still en route to Jacksonville from other jurisdictions. So this is just a portion of what we have. But that's what you're looking at, are kilos of cocaine and then marijuana broken down into different quantities.
Ron, but all this is from the operation, right? This isn't from any other operation.
All this from this operation.
And in terms of the leaders of these two organizations, so one was in South Florida, one was in Texas, so the majority of the Jacksonville activity, I guess, could you classify it as kind of importing and distributing?
Exactly, I mean, that's, right, and that's normally what we see, so.
And on the Houston people, I'm sorry, who was the funneler of all this, and was this all being produced in Texas? Was it coming up south of the border? Can you clarify if we know the answers to any of this?
Without getting into too much detail, most of the cocaine that comes from Houston towards Jacksonville, anywhere to the east, comes out of Mexico at some point.
And are you working with Houston authorities to figure
Absolutely.
that part out?
And the FBI as well. Thank you guys for being here, I appreciate it, thanks a lot.